Hello, everyone, and welcome to Live with Sara and Tasha. I am Sara Hodson, the founder and CEO at Live Well Exercise Clinic, followed by the best of the best, the weekly feature on social media. Have you seen that, Tasha?
I did.
Ooh,
Thank you.
yes, Tasha McCrae.
I'm Tasha McCrae. I am the VP of Brand and Culture here at LiveWell. And Sara and I are LiveWell's original exercise physiologists and health coaches. And we're just excited that you took some time out of your busy days to join us. Sara and I host these calls just to share our passion about the power of exercise and behavior change in helping you live your life to the fullest. And every week, on this little segment, we bring you a new health topic to help you live your life to the fullest.
And as always, at the end of our discussion, we will end our recording so that this can go on YouTube after, but we will stay on and do a live Q&A with all of those who are attending live with us today. So you can look forward to that at the end to save up all of your questions and we'll have a good chat. I must say, Tasha, your hair is looking very, very lovely today. It has some extra flow to it. I don't know if you've used a blow dryer or
I
what has
have.
happened.
It's
Oh, it's a
amazing.
blow dryer.
It's amazing what you can do with a blow dryer.
Truly, truly.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. I appreciate that, Sara, that vote of confidence here
See,
today.
my hair is up in a ponytail, and that's because I did not use the magic of a blow dryer. So
I love it. I love it. Today we are talking about osteoporosis. And hold on, you might be thinking, wait a minute, I'm a man or I'm too young to worry about osteoporosis. But we really are going to help you recognize that this is bone health is something we should be thinking about throughout the entire lifespan, no matter your gender. And November is Osteoporosis Month here in Canada. So we're going to today talk a little bit about, what osteoporosis is, what the risk factors for it are, and then talk a bit about exercise and where that fits in. So maybe I'll start off by, in case you're not familiar with osteoporosis, sometimes people kind of get osteoporosis and osteoarthritis mixed up because of that word osteo, which really just means bone. But where we talked about arthritis a couple weeks back, osteoporosis is a disease that's characterized by low bone mass. So it's a deterioration of our bone tissue. And yes, it is more common in people over the age of 50, but it can start affecting people who are much younger. So even, somebody so youthful like Sara or myself, wink, wink, nudge, nudge there, should also be thinking about the health of our bones. So, it's also that misconception that this is really only a women's disease. We know that 1 in 5 men in Canada will break a bone in their lifetime from osteoporosis. That number is higher, 1 in 3 in women who will break a bone due to osteoporosis in their lifetime. But really, our bone building years are in childhood. So if you have children, grandchildren, younger people in your life, get them jumping up and down, get them using their bones, because we build strong bones in our childhood, really. And then we're just trying to maintain our bone mass as we start aging. Sara, do you want to talk about maybe the risk factors?
Sure, I could do that. Yeah. So besides your gender and your age, as Tasha just alluded to, there are other risk factors for osteoporosis. So a family history, that's always something that we do need to consider. And it's usually of a first degree relative. So, if it's of a great grandmother, it's not as much of a risk to use than if it was a sister or mother, or we don't want to forget, maybe it could be a brother or a father, right? This isn't just a woman's disease. And on a whole other topic, we'll talk about how heart disease is not just a man's disease, but that's for a whole other segment. Thought I'd throw that in there. Maybe it was a non-traumatic fracture after the age of 40. So breaking a bone after the age of 40 does put you at risk. And then things like your calcium consumption and vitamin D. Those are really important components. But, I would be remiss if I didn't mention your physical activity levels. As Tasha said, our bone building years are in our younger years. And in fact, impact on the bone is a really, really important component of bone strength. So not using our bones, not using our skeleton, not using our body actually doesn't give us the strength of the bones that we need. And so, oftentimes that's where I really encourage people to not just do aquatic exercise, right? Oftentimes people really want to say, oh, well, for my physical activity, I go to the pool. But in the pool, we're not actually load bearing. We're not actually putting that weight on our bone. So physical activity and what we would call loading our bones, which you can get simply from even going for a walk, right? Every time you take a step. Your alcohol consumption, we fondly remember our discussion from last week. Smoking, long-term use of things like steroids or hormonal treatments. And those are, often things that people will be prescribed going through cancer treatment. And certain antidepressants can put you at risk for osteoporosis. As well as for women, early menopause does put you at a greater risk of osteoporosis. So if you recognize yourself with some of these potential risk factors, it is important to educate yourself, speak to your doctor, discuss this with your healthcare team, because you want to ensure that you are protecting your bones. Because going through a fracture, for any of you who have ever experienced that or have a loved one who has experienced that, it's a very long recovery process. And so we want to be looking at the prevention side of it. And that may not mean preventing osteoporosis altogether, but it's also preventing falls and fractures. So a great resource if you wanted to is the Osteoporosis Canada website. It has things like a risk calculator, even a calcium calculator. And you can also get their newsletter, which I believe is called Unbreakable.
Yeah, so it's a great site. I believe it's just osteoporosis.ca if you're looking for more information. And this is a really, I don't actually know if you know this, Sarah, this is kind of a near and dear topic to my heart, because I have a grandmother who passed away quite young due to hip fracture. And wow. Yeah, she had a fall and sustained a hip fracture, which is one of the falls we're most concerned about. So hip wrists are very common in falls with somebody with osteoporosis, and hip fractures can be particularly devastating. And interestingly, they actually believe that they may be more devastating for men than women. But in my particular family's history, my grandmother went into surgery for that hip fracture, and unfortunately had a complicated post-op and didn't make it out. So really, really important to take care of our bones, because we all have falls. We want to try to prevent falls, but falls happen, and we want to make sure that our bones are strong enough to sustain them, because it can be a really devastating injury. Mm-hmm. So on that note, let me share with you how you can keep your bones strong through the power of exercise. So couple of different types of exercise. Sarah's already talked about that weight-bearing exercise. So that's really important to make sure you're including. If you are doing pool type stuff, that's great, but make sure you're also including weight-bearing exercise along with that. So again, weight-bearing, Sarah talked about walking, but it could include dancing, hiking, something like biking. The bike is supporting your weight, so it is not as weight-bearing as you would like. So yes, great for your cardiovascular system, But for your bones, you want to do something where you're getting a little bit of pounding on the bones. So even an exercise, I know you can't see my feet here, but pretend these are my feet. And even an exercise where you lift and lower your heels. So you're kind of getting a little bump onto your heels each time, gives a little bit of loading to your bones that can be beneficial. So think about that when you're brushing your teeth or you're, unloading the dishwasher. If you can do that sort of little bit of pounding type exercise. For those of you where jumping is appropriate, right? If you've got really bad knees, maybe jumping is inappropriate, but that thumping exercise might be better. But exercises where you are jumping and getting a little bit more, I think you can hear my chair going here in the background, where you're getting a little bit more impact to the bones will help that bone preserve itself. Our bones, like our muscles, work on a use it or lose it principle. And if we're not using that bone and forcing it to remodel against stress, then it just goes, I'm not getting stress in that area. I don't need to kind of remodel that area to be stronger. It's the same principle we see with resistance exercise training, which is a really important part of bone health. And often people go for the walk, but they leave out the resistance training. And if you think about it, your muscles attach into an area on your bone. And when that muscle is pulling, it makes that attachment point on the bone remodel and grow stronger. And therefore, if you have a fall and your muscle has to contract really quickly in order to try and stabilize you and catch you, it's less likely to rip off at the site where the muscle inserts into the bone, what we call an avulsion fracture, where it just rips, sort of that muscle comes right off. So the resistance training can help those insertion points get really strong and help you avoid those kinds of fractures. The other types of exercises, jump in anytime, Sarah, I'll dominate the whole conversation from here on.
You're doing great. You're doing great. You're on a roll.
But the is balance exercises. For obvious reasons, we want you to be doing some balance exercises so that if you are in a situation where you're thrown off balance, a skateboarder on the sidewalk, or there's something there that you trip over, you're going to want to be able to recover, and your balance exercises can help with that. So make sure you're getting those in. More, those are the kind of exercises, they don't take long. You're not going to break a sweat. Try to do those types of things daily. Weight bearing exercise, at least 150 minutes a week kind of idea. Resistance training 2 to 3 times a week. Balance exercises, see if you can fit them in daily. They don't take long, and it can be something, again, you incorporate into your daily life. While I'm brushing my teeth, I'm also trying to work on my balance by standing with my feet in tandem or standing on one foot or something like that. And then the last type of exercise that is really important when we're thinking, well, it's important for everybody, but it's especially important when you maybe have a lower bone mass, is postural exercises. And that is to reduce the load on your spine. And one of the things that we know when you have osteoporosis is you're at increased risk for spinal fractures. And these can be just small kind of cracking happening in the vertebrae. And when you have osteoporosis, you're at high risk for spinal fractures. And so we have to make sure that we're kind of loading the spine well. And so, postural exercises could be something as simple as, if you find you're sitting at a computer and you're kind of poking your neck forward a lot during the day, just doing those chin tucks. Or you may have seen in clinic, you may have been prescribed wall angels, where you stand against the wall, kind of like you're doing a snow angel, but standing upright. You want to try to get the back of your head against the wall and then slide your hands along the wall to open up that chest and really avoid that forward rounding and hunching that we may get in our upper back and through our cervical spine. So I'm really thinking about those. Again, those are super easy. See how you can incorporate them into your day. I keep a little timer on my computer, ding, that goes off. That kind of reminds me, let's check in with your posture here, because I sit at a desk a lot. And so then I can sort of focus on getting the chin back, make sure I haven't sort of hunched forward, and really just pay attention to that. I know there's all sorts of posture trainers and things like that that you can buy on Facebook and Instagram and the internet, but sometimes just checking in with yourself and being mindful of your posture is enough. So those are the 4 main types of exercise. If you are already diagnosed with osteoporosis, one of the things that I want you to be very careful of in your day-to-day life is spinal flexion, which means bending forward at any point in the spine, could be the upper back and into the lower back, and rotating at the same time. So even here at my desk, if you can see me a little bit better, if I was to reach down for something and then twist around, I put a tremendous amount of strain on my vertebrae. And if they're already compromised, that's where we can start to get these little spinal fractures. The difficulty with spinal fractures is that we don't feel them. They're often painless. And it's not until we start to find things like, oh my goodness, I lost half an inch this year or something like that in height, that our doctor starts to cue, ooh, something might be going on here with the health of the bones in your spine. So really important to exercise. I think Sara and I mention that every week. We almost can't find something that exercise won't help you with. So really make sure that you're getting that in there, but being really cognizant if you're somebody who has diagnosed with osteopenia. Anyone heard of osteopenia? It's the precursor to osteoporosis. So your doctor might say you're osteopenic. That means your bone mass is reducing. It's kind of like pre-diabetes. You haven't gotten to the point where it's bad enough to give you a diagnosis of diabetes or a diagnosis of osteoporosis. But osteopenia is kind of like pre-osteoporosis. It tells us that your bone mass isn't as good as potentially it should be, and that we do have to really watch that. So making sure that you're preventing and holding on to all of that good bone that you developed in childhood by doing all 4 types of exercise: weight bearing, resistance training, postural, and balance.
Amazing. I applaud you, Tasha.
Wait,
what a
hold
run.
on. That was me taking a breath, because I don't think I did that whole time. I just
amazing. So this week in the clinic, you are also learning about osteoporosis. And so we thank you for spending this time with us. And those are our tips to help your bones live healthy and to help you ultimately live well. We thank you for joining us this week on Sara and Tasha Live. And as always, we wish you sweat and smiles all week long. Thank you, everyone.